Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Leah Meyerhoff, and I am the founder of Film Fatales, which is a collective of female feature directors based in New York with a dozen other chapters around the world. And we get together monthly to support and mentor each other and collaborate on projects and really promote the creation of more films by and about women. And I am honored to introduce this incredible lineup of talented female filmmakers. Let's just go down the row, starting with Eleanor, and just introduce yourself and the name of the film that we just saw.
Thank you. I'm Eleanor Wilson, and I'm the writer-director of Possum.
Laura Medina, producer-director of Broke Down Paradise.
Elizabeth Burris, writer-director of Notes on Forgiveness.
And I'm Chiemi Karasawa, and I just crashed this party. I have no idea what.
You're a talented producer and filmmaker in her own
Producer,
right.
filmmaker. I just made a film called Elaine Stritch Shoot Me, which is a documentary.
Fantastic. So I'd like to start by talking about casting and the casting process. This is the SAG Short Film Showcase, after all. So let's start with you, Eleanor. Just talk a little bit about how you found your actors and how you decided to cast yourself.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, I wasn't a filmmaker before Possum. This was my first film, and I've made 2 more since. But yeah, I was really, I guess I just was an actor, and I wanted to start making my own work. And so I wrote this script, and it was workshopped with a group called the Indies Lab, which is a group of actors and writers who would sort of get together weekly and workshop scripts. So Jenny and Anthony, who are in the first scene, were both from the Indies Lab, and they were there from the very beginning of the first draft, helping me workshop it. Miguel I'd worked with on a lot of stuff before and had sort of wrote that part for him, so that was really a no-brainer. Yeah, I guess it's kind of easy when you're an actor, you know lots of other actors and you can just kind of cast your friends, so yeah.
Well, I actually had met Donna Duplantier, who's the lead in my film, just drinking in New Orleans, you know, the typical thing, and had just been very struck by her. And the person that introduced us had said she was very talented, and I had her in mind. And when I decided to do this project, which was actually done, I'm a professor at the University of New Orleans, and it was done as a course, a spring film production. I work with the person who teaches screenwriting, and I said, write a role for a 35-ish-year-old African-American. I started from that. She actually didn't know. I didn't ask her. So the film was written for her. And then I went to her with it and asked her if she would do it, and she signed on. And then the rest of the cast was put together through working with a casting director that Beth also worked with, who's in New Orleans, named Liz Coulon. And the actors, some of the actors knew each other. And one of the actors is one of our graduate students, acting graduate students in the theater program, and one of them's a professor, so kind of was all put together.
My project was my student thesis, so I was first-time director, and I was awarded the NIM scholarship, which is just money based on my script and project that the faculty thought I deserved to use those funds for. And I hired Liz Coulon, who Laura had introduced me to. She was a casting director in New Orleans. And I put most of my budget towards my lead, since it was kind of character depth and first-time director and everything. So that's where I thought my budget needed to go.
Yeah. Well, you know, the Gina Davis Institute recently released this study, which said that less than 30% of the speaking roles on screen are filled by women. And I think it's very interesting that of this lineup of female directors, all of the films we saw tonight had strong female protagonists, really grappling with difficult subject matter. And I'm wondering if you could speak to what we can do as content creators and as a society to increase the diversity in casting and really generate more content specifically for all the actresses in the audience here tonight.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. So yeah, that is obviously something that I think about a lot now. It wasn't something that I thought about when I did Possum, but I also had a female DP and a female editor, and since then I've realized how cool it is to go around and be like, you know, this is a female-driven story, and my DP is also a woman, and my editor's a woman, and you know, it's like, it's a really the sort of point of pride. And so since then, I've really tried to, make a point of casting and creating more roles in the work that I'm doing for women. And I think
was part of the reason you chose Possum as your first film because you weren't finding enough content for yourself as an actress, or where did that idea come from?
Yeah, I think I just had been on a lot of film sets and just wanted to be a part of that side of things. That must have been part of it as well. I had an idea and I thought, oh, this actually could work as a film, and I'm going to give this a try. And now definitely that's much more of my path. But I think Gina Davis had a really good quote that I'm absolutely going to destroy and paraphrase right now, but they're just about, if you want, there to be more diversity, just take this role of this, shopkeeper and make that a woman, make that person black, just there's so many ways that you can just find to change all the roles in your film and diversify a cast. And I think that, that is now how I think about my scripts, and just that doesn't have to be a man, that can totally be a woman, all throughout. So.
Well, if I don't do it, who will? I feel compelled. And I'm genuinely interested in those stories. It's not the only stories I'm interested in, but there's plenty of men telling stories about men. And I get tired of seeing, every coming of age story is boys coming of age. And, so I'm just telling the stories, like I said, if I don't do it, who will? So.
Do you think you bring, as a female filmmaker, do you think you bring anything specific or distinct to the way that your approach to storytelling, and perhaps the way that you work with your actors or your crew?
I don't know about the approach to storytelling, except for maybe being more tuned in and sensitive to women characters and what they're really like, might their motivations be, and making them more multidimensional than they often appear to be. As far as a director, I don't know. I think women make better directors. I said this once before. We're more collaborative. We're used to listening, empathizing, teamwork, perfectly capable of leading. That's not the issue. But I actually do think that all of those are excellent skills for a director, and women make better directors.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the collaborative nature of filmmaking. I'm curious to hear who were the biggest collaborators on your project, and how did you come about the creation of it?
Well, we went through a thesis writing course, so a whole semester of revisions and critiques and people saying, this wasn't good enough, you can go further and push you and help. So I had all of my professors were very hands-on in helping me write the script and edit the movie, and really guiding me through. My sister's a creative writer, so she helped me with the story along the way a lot. We had meetings after meetings. So I would say the most collaborative was between my editor, my writer helpers, and DP.
And Chiemi. So you founded the company Isotope Films.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a bit about the genesis of the creation of that company?
I had been working in feature film and television for about 20 years as a script supervisor. And I started noticing that there was a lack of, I'd be working with directors, and I felt like there was not enough creative support for a director. I would be, a person sitting next to them, and they'd say, "What did you think of that take?" And I mean, I was working with Stephen Frears and Martin Scorsese and Spike Lee and Spike Jonze and all these amazing directors, and the producers would be off, taking care of the administrative and the business and the budgeting and the scheduling and all that stuff. And so I wanted to start a production company that was really supportive of a director's creative vision. And initially, I had a narrative script that I was trying to help produce. And the woman that I was renting office space from said, I've always wanted to make a documentary. And she started telling me. And so on the side, on the back burner, I started helping her make this documentary. And all the scheduling and the financing of the feature film that we were putting together fell into place, except our lead actor passed away, and that was Heath Ledger. And it was a really tragic, of course, incident, But I kept on with this documentary, and that became my first feature doc as a producer, called Billy the Kid, and we premiered it at South by Southwest, and we won the best documentary for that year, and then we won at the LA Film Festival for best documentary in Melbourne and Edinburgh. And it was so funny because the director, Jennifer Vendetti, and I, it was our first film ever that we collaborated on. It was her first time directing a doc, and it was my first time producing, and it just kept leading to more and more work. I had a wonderful friend, Ellen Kuris, who is a cinematographer, and she came to me and said, you know, I've been trying to finish my senior thesis for NYU Film School for 25 years, and it's called The Betrayal, and it's this documentary, and people kept just coming to me with documentaries as if I knew something about them, you know? And I just kept helping, and I developed so many relationships in the narrative film world. And everybody, it seems like, that's a storyteller has a story, whether it's a documentary or a narrative film, it's all storytelling. And they'd say, hey, I have a documentary. I worked for many years with a guy, Spike Jones, and he had a film about Maurice Sendak that he was making while he was making Where the Wild Things Were, and Where the Wild Things Are, excuse me. And things just kept happening that way, and it became a company, and I kept making films, so.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm familiar with all of those films, and actually Jennifer Vendetti is part of Film Fatales, and she used to be a casting director, still is a casting director.
That's right.
And which leads me to my next question, which is just to ground it a little bit in statistics. Another study recently came out through the Sundance Institute that less than 5% of the major studio films were directed by women. And female directors, one of the largest challenges that we face is raising financing for our films. So I'm curious how all of you went about finding the funding for your films, and if you have any advice for other female filmmakers or male filmmakers looking to get their first films off the ground.
Well, this film, as I mentioned, was made through a class called Spring Film Production. So when I got to UNO a couple of years ago, I came from Los Angeles to teach there, they told me they had this class and they give you $10,000, which is nothing. You kind of have to take whoever comes into the class. So in my second year there, I'm like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to take the opportunity to make a film. And but we also raised $9,000 through Indiegogo. So part of the class was organizing my students and my student producers to do an Indiegogo campaign. And I think for small amounts of money, that can be, crowdfunding can be useful. So we ended up spending about $18,500 on that short. So that's one idea. Or become a professor at a university and use all their equipment and students and things like that.
I was awarded a scholarship for $11,000. I've never tried Indiegogo or Kickstarter. I'm not opposed to it. It just wasn't, my film wasn't ready for it at the time. There wasn't enough interest, and pre-production had already started. So I would be interested in trying it next time, though.
Yeah, for Possum, I just kind of used my own money and a little bit of friends' money. It was a very small budget. We had the location for free. We got a lot of stuff for free, so we were lucky there. I have done a Kickstarter campaign for a film before, and I mean, really, for short films, I feel like the crowdfunding is kind of the way to go. My last film, I was really lucky of having an executive producer that kind of just dealt with that, and I didn't have to worry too much about the money. But I mean, it's all very small budgets. When you're talking under 10 grand for each film, it's achievable to pull together a budget like that with the generosity of your friends.
And how about you? And the difference between documentary and feature and
I listen to the sound of your budgets, and it makes me so envious, because I for the Elaine Stritch documentary, I had to raise $500,000, and it was actually a very fortuitous situation. I was having brunch with a woman who I had met on a previous film several years ago. I think it was almost 6 years ago, and we were having brunch, and I actually met Elaine Stritch and my hairdresser a few weeks earlier, and my hairdresser had said, you should be making a documentary about that lady. And to my total embarrassment, I didn't know who she was above and beyond 30 Rock, and I had just made a film with John Turturro where she played James Gandolfini's mother. And so I had day played with her, and I knew that she was this hurricane of a lady. And so I snuck to the New York Public Library, and I started renting everything that she had ever done and watching in the booth, Elaine Stritch at Liberty, and every film that she ever made up until that point that was available on tape. And I was mortified that I didn't know more about her. I was ashamed, and I thought, God, I can't let this happen to anybody else. I've got to make a film about this lady. And so I kept running into her at the hair salon, and I started to, my hairdresser started putting our appointments closer and closer together so that I could just run into her, and I started a courtship. And she thought it was a good idea. And so I'm sitting here at brunch, and this lady says, so what are you doing now? And I said, well, I'm trying to make this documentary about Elaine Stritch, but I don't know who's going to finance it. And she looked at me, and she goes, how much do you need? Wow. And I thought, I don't know, between $400,000 and $600,000. And she said, well, I'll give you one. And I said, you'll give me $100,000? And, she wrote a check. And so that was the beginning of a year's worth of filmmaking.
Not always that easy.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I've been making films for like 8 years by then, and I'd never had that happen before. So I was looking around like, is this some kind of a weird, what's going on? So we were able to start shooting and then keep, with that year's worth of filmmaking, following Elaine around, or being dragged around with her, we were able to put together a trailer and start raising more money. And then I had this incident where somebody that was supposed to invest the second half of financing never came through. And so I started an Indiegogo campaign because I didn't know what else to do. We had already been accepted to a film festival. I needed finishing funds. It was kind of one of those dire situations. And we started raising money. But the best thing I think about crowdfunding is that so many people hear about your movie, and all those people can become supporters in your distribution campaign and in your promotion campaign. When your film starts getting further and further along, you have this group of supporters that are connected to you. And one of the people that found out about my film through the campaign was Alec Baldwin, and I got this phone call, and he said, how much more do you need? And it was just like, oh my God. So that's one of the great things that can happen to you via crowdfunding is somebody, somebody who can really do something.
It is a collaborative medium that way.
Exactly, yeah.
I have just a few questions from the audience that were written down previously. This one is for you, Eleanor. What was it like directing yourself in your film?
It was actually not as hard as I thought it was going to be, to be honest. I had a really, really great DP who was just... the process of how we worked is that we would just we rehearsed, we had a whole day of rehearsing with the camera and sort of setting up every scene and planning everything out so that on the day it wouldn't be so stressful. And she would just take a still of the first frame of each shot, and I would check it and say, yeah, that looks good, or move it a little bit, and then we would just let it go. And we never watched playback on set. Like at night, sometimes I would watch a little bit of dailies just to make sure that we kind of got everything. But it was really just kind of having someone else who was awesome on set, who knew how to follow performance, and I just completely trusted her with that. And just working with the other actors, you kind of get a sense of, okay, I think we've got it now. Like, I think we're good and we can move on. And so if Mika was happy and I was happy, then it was like, all right, next. And it was, I think the trick also is having a really small crew, so you don't have like too many people to answer to. Like we just had there's 5 of us, and it was just very calm. And since then I've sort of realized that that's kind of the only way to do it is just keep everything very calm and stress-free, and everything's going to be fine.
Thank you. And Laura, this question is, what camera did you shoot on?
A red camera because it was free from the school.
Okay, that was an easy one. Speaking of school, this one is for you. Is film school still an apt way to enter the industry?
I think so, yes. It provides so many opportunities, and you meet so many mentors and different people who can help guide you along. Was a wonderful resource for me.
Okay, here's a complicated one. You ready? How do you organize your day? Advice on time management for your process.
Me?
That's you.
Oh, I don't know. If anyone has advice, I would totally take it. 'Cause I think one of the great assets, and I can't say that women are better directors as a gender, but I think one thing that we do just out of necessity is we're great multitaskers, because that's the way it's always been, you know. And so I think one of my assistants said, you know, I can't say that you go from A to Z when you do it, you go any direct route, but you manage to get a lot of things done by doing a lot of them all at the same time. So I don't know actually how I manage my time. I just know I have to get to the end of the day and finish a certain amount of things, and how I get there, I really don't know. I can't give anybody advice about that.
And I think we have time for a few more questions. I can't tell what's going on. 5 minutes? Oh, Lisa is here. Welcome. Nice to meet you, and congrats.
Nice to meet you, thanks.
So can you tell us, how did your story come to you? What drew you to make this film?
Well, I've been focusing a lot on my writing lately, and I had one of these experiences where I went to yoga. I was sort of having like a writing day, and I went to this yoga class, and this instructor like had us do a certain pose, and he said it put some pressure on our hips, and that our hips store emotions. So I sort of had this emotional experience during the class, and then afterwards, like an hour or so later, it's like the story just flooded me. And I basically, what you see on the screen is like what I sat down and wrote that day. I changed it, you know, very little, but it was sort of one of those moments where it like appeared to me, and I had to write it down, and then I had to make it once I saw it on the page.
Okay, so yoga, hair salons, this is good. Okay, next question is, how long did it take for you to get to this level? Yeah, let's talk about the path, the journey that we've been on to get to this point.
It's taken me a while. I didn't go to film school, so I was an English major, and I decided I wanted to make films after school, and I just started working in the industry. So it took time of like, I worked for directors as assistant for a while, I worked in editing, and then I just kept making my own films. So it's been sort of like a 10-year process, but I'm happy about where I am now, so that's good.
How about you, Eleanor?
Yeah, I guess it's probably been about 10 years of doing various things that have got me to this point. I started out just producing friends' short films and just helping out on set. And then I did TV production and, all the while sort of acting throughout this. I moved to New York just under 7 years ago and went to drama school. And, it all just kind of happens in a roundabout way. But yeah, I guess it's been about 10 years that I've been sort of pursuing this.
I'm not going to say how many years I've been at it. I did go to film school. I went to NYU Graduate Film School and started on the path and took a lot of detours. I've always worked in the film business, though. And I would just say, I'll admit to 20 years and counting. I'm still on the road. You just keep processing. I feel like I know enough now, hopefully, that I'm teaching others, but I'm also still learning. So
I don't think of myself as a filmmaker yet.
Why not? You're obviously a filmmaker.
I'm so new,
You're here.
and but yeah, I loved it, and I was in school, so you had to meet those deadlines to go to the next level of course and everything, and I'm so glad I had those. Otherwise, it would have been so overwhelming at times for a first-time director to feel like you didn't have control over it. It was such a collaboration, and to have those teachers keep pushing and saying, yes, you can, don't give up. So I'm ready for the next project because the first one was just so many new experiences and dealings with a crew.
Yeah, your journey.
Yeah.
In 5 minutes or less.
All right. I'm a 20-something experience of years. And I started I went to undergrad film school at Boston University, and when I moved to New York, I was bartending at CBGB's, and I was interning as an assistant to a producer in the daytime, and then bartending at nighttime. And And then that was the way I figured out that the position that I wanted to be on set was the woman who had the book and a chair and like not too much cable to coil and whatever, and had the vantage point of the director. I really wanted that relationship so I could see from that perspective. And I trained and became a script supervisor for many years, probably almost 18 years. And during that time, I was starting my own business too. So I was straddling script supervising on feature film, television, and commercials while I was starting my own company and starting to produce projects.
I'm curious, what was the catalyst for you to switch from being a producer or a script supervisor to a director?
I think I always had my eye on directing. I just didn't know how I was going to begin that process because I didn't have a lot of money, and I just felt like people always create movies and reels. And I think in the digital world now, it's so much easier to get out there and tell your story with very little money, edit it on your laptop. In those days, it wasn't quite the same route. But I think that my career as a script supervisor actually, it didn't derail. It just kept me really occupied on a lot of really fascinating projects with filmmakers that I've learned from and relationships that I've actually employed moving myself forward. So I think if it weren't for Elaine, I wouldn't be a director, because she's the one that said, she goes, well, who's going to direct this thing? And I said, well, I'm looking for a director, someone with a lot of experience that can help us raise money. And she said, why don't you do it? And I said, I'd love to do it, but nobody knows who I am. And she goes, who cares? Who cares what they think? And she goes, I know you, I like you, and I don't want to get to know anyone else on this show. And I did it, and thank God, you know what I mean? Because I'm running out of time here, But I think whatever your journey is, the most important part is that you have really interesting, diverse, rich experiences from which to draw and tell other stories from. Because all of your characters need to be believable, and that has to come from real life experience. So.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. This is our final question from the audience, which is, what is the best way for a union actor to contact all of us and submit to our films? And I'm going to add to that, which is just, what is advice for the actors in the room to maybe generate their own content or to get themselves out there and get their foot in the door? Let's start with you, Lisa.
With my project, I worked with a casting director, but on the festival circuit, I've actually met a lot of actors who've approached me, and it's great meeting actors face to face and receiving their contact information directly. I guess I've always approached it working with a casting director for my film, but I think it's important to build relationships with filmmakers and for filmmakers to build relationship with actors. And I know a lot of actors too that want to create their own material, so they're in something that they really believe in and that they have control over. So I think that's also great.
So what's your email?
And speaking of actors who create their own material, Eleanor?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge advocate for doing that. It's just so satisfying, to be able to create something that you really love and believe in. I'm very Googleable. You can find me if you look me up. If anyone wants to contact me, just shoot me an email and or Facebook or whatever. But yeah.
And what advice might you have for actors who maybe have written something or want to produce something but don't necessarily want to direct, or trying to get themselves out there more and take control of their own careers, but how could they get their content into the hands of people who could help them make their films?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just go and do a lot of, like, what I had done before this was worked on a lot of student films, and I think that's a really good way to meet other people who are at a stage in their career where they're willing to work on other things, for free or cheaply, and it's a really nice environment to kind of, meet similar people at that level. And, a lot of the people that worked on my films were, people that I'd met on other sets before. And so if you don't want to direct, but you have something that you've written, like, go and just meet directors. I think there is a lot of, like, SVA have, like, actor-director mixes and things like that. There's always going to be people out there who want to make work, and if someone's coming to them with a really good idea and a good script, then, I'm sure that, we're in New York City, there's so many of us here, we're just out there, just reach out and grab at people,
How about you? Advice for actors in the room?
Well, if you want to work with me for the moment, you'll have to come to New Orleans and maybe go to a good bar. You'll meet me. Film schools, you could be up on the screen right now. People are doing really good work, especially at the graduate level, and professors and professionals. I had a lot of professionals working on this project. So I would say be open to that, and you never know. Hair salon, yoga studio, bar, like you never know, like when you're going to meet somebody, and so be open, be present to opportunity. And you can find me at the University of New Orleans. Go to the website, Laura Medina. I'm there.
I think you were talking about internet and social media being a big outlet. Now there's so many different kind of writing competitions online that you could just constantly submit to for free. That, of course, with the internet, you have to go through a lot of bad stuff to really find the gems. There's a lot out there, but there's so many competitions that recognize really great work.
Where do you get your hair cut? That's what they all want to know.
Bartali on 57th Street. But I would say, I think a great rule of thumb is to gravitate toward talented people and people that you admire, especially writers, really great writers, because you can be a really great actress with really good, material, actors, I should say. But create community around yourself, work with people that you feel are talented, that you all bring something to the table, because it really takes more than one person to get your stuff out there. So the sooner you learn that filmmaking and acting and everything is a collaborative effort, I think the stronger, the easier you'll have, putting yourself in the spotlight.
I'm a huge proponent of collaborative filmmaking. After this, I'm going to invite all of you who are not yet in Film Fatales to come join. Some of the best advice I ever got was to not wait for permission to make our films, but to really give ourselves permission to go make our films. So I always like to kind of end on that note. But I think we have a few more minutes. I'd love to just hear what everyone has, what they're working on next.
I would like to make my first feature, so right now I'm working on a few scripts and trying to, I guess, decide which is the first one to make and embark on that long, hard journey. So.
I just completed another short. It's called Everything All at Once. It's starting its festival run in Maine next month.
Yeah, I think I'd like to make another short again before trying a feature. It's like the short story world. There's something really lovely about, and it's challenging. And there's no money in it, there's no commercial outlet for shorts. It's really like painting or sculpture, but it's really quite wonderful. And so I think that's going to be my next project rather than a feature, and then maybe a feature, which is a whole different kind of commitment and a whole nother level of financing, which is,
I'm a long way from pre-production, but my next project, I'm hoping to explore a protagonist that has a perspective that we're not used to, maybe from a dog's perspective, where the accountability's not there, or we, our innocence too, and it be a lot of voiceover, it's going to be a short film, and I'm just brainstorming.
I'm developing a feature film based on a true story that someone came to me with and commissioned me to turn into a narrative film. So we're working on our final draft of that, and I hope to direct it either later this year or early next.
What's that called?
Well, the tentative working title is Our Hearts Were Touched with Fire. And then I have a documentary that I'm in production with about 2 lip-syncing drag queens that I met on YouTube who are from Compton, but they live in Las Vegas. I'm developing a series, I hope, for television about 40-something women, and also a wine show.
And I am also a filmmaker, and I directed a feature film called I Believe in Unicorns, which is opening at IFC Center on May 29th. So I'm inviting all of you. So thank you again so much for being here.